Hello and welcome to the Business of What's Next. I'm your host, Matthew Shipp, and today I'm here with Charlie Sells, founder of Clarity Over Everything. This show explores how ambitious leaders cut through noise, decide what matters, and sets up their business for what's next. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So, clarity over everything is obviously a very, very important to you if your business is named for it. So, give us some context as to what led to this.
Oh man, so I was a career changer almost 10 years ago. I was a youth pastor for about a decade. And when I got a degree in marketing and then became a youth pastor right after college, and then when it came time to, have some kids who wanted to be involved in sports, it was time for a little bit of a change. And so I went and worked for a company called Ramsey Solutions, if you know Dave Ramsey and the radio show and
Yeah.
financial piece and all the great things. And I remember walking in and having a great leader who really challenged me very early on to say, there were really two things that happened simultaneously. This leader pulled me aside and said, I want you to find a way to be so valuable that a meeting can't start without you being there. And I knew it wasn't going to be because I was the smartest or the most accomplished. Again, I'm a career changer in a lot of ways. And so I just made a commitment to ask the best questions in the room to really make sure that I understood something so that my job could get easier, but also just to put that out into the room and make sure that we were seeing things from the right angles. Shortly after that, I heard a phrase that really became my business name. I didn't know it was going to at the time, but I heard somebody in one of our content team meetings say, "Our job as writers is to drive for clarity over everything." And that really just kind of stuck with me. And so when I left that company, worked for a small agency for a minute, and then launched out on my own, I thought, well, that's what I want to do. Whether I'm writing, whether I'm doing strategy or consulting or execution, no matter what, I really want to make sure everything is clear. And especially for the business owners I work with now, they really appreciate that level of intentionality because, I mean, if anything is muddy, it's entrepreneurship and trying to run your own thing and build your own business. So having somebody like me to come in and say, we're going to make sure that all of this makes sense, and that's the filter through which we're going to make decisions, that helps build trust pretty quickly.
Absolutely, yeah, especially somebody wearing lots of hats, things can get muddy real quick.
Yeah.
So, now I think you described yourself as a brand architect. So,
Yes.
how would you explain that to a business owner?
There's a funny middle ground, Matt, between marketing and creative, where a lot of marketers, typically in an agency situation or an internal team, marketers are the ones who call all the shots and say, here's what we're going to do. And, creatives by contrast are the ones who make all the stuff and most of the time do some of the testing and whatnot. And so I live in between both of those. I like to say that you get the best of both worlds working with somebody like me because I understand the creative side and I have that lens thinking about possibilities and the what ifs while also hopefully adhering to brand standards. But I also have a very strategic mindset and approach to thinking through like how a page is laid out or what a campaign should really be communicating. I'm also very interested in the analytical side of it, so I'm looking at data and numbers and plucking out not just the story that it tells, but hopefully grounding the business in the reality of where they are right now. So, as a brand architect, and a friend of mine said that actually is probably your job description if you were ever to write your own. My job is to help a business owner design and implement a strategy that they actually understand. And sometimes that leads to the execution side, but most of the time it's just helping them get a 40,000 foot view of where they are right now, prioritizing and simplifying the things that need to be accomplished very quickly or the things that need to be continued because they don't need to go away. They're working very well. And then helping to roadmap out the next 90 days and then of course the next 12 months of what do we want this brand to look like a year from now.
That's awesome. You have that nice systemized flow to helping them kind of narrow down not only the clarity but focus. And that's usually what I talk to a lot of the people that I help is the two terms that come up is clarity and focus.
Hmm.
And just like you really nailed this well for me is how you focus them down, bring the clarity towards their branding and their marketing. I mean, and when I work with people, I'm usually helping them identify there are 35 different initiatives to find out what's most impactful, designing a
Hmm.
strategy around accomplishing that as well. So yeah, this aligns really well.
Yeah.
So there was another, so typically what do they come to you with first, branding or marketing challenges, typically
Oh,
in a company you help?
It's usually neither. It's usually a tactical
Ah,
question that they don't realize is a
okay.
marketing question or a strategy
Excellent.
question.
Mhm.
I've used this example all the time. I had an author that I worked with for about a year who the very first interaction with me said, I need to be doing social media. And I went, maybe. Let's find out a little bit more about that. And the more
Nice,
that we
nice.
dug in, the more we realized that she had a bunch of broken systems and a bunch of
Mhm.
platforms that weren't talking to one another. One was really outdated, one was not accomplishing her goals, and they were all costing her about 4x what they should have. And
Wow.
so my goal, first off, was to say, hey, before we go public with anything, we need to make sure that the foundation of your brand is rock solid, that you love your
Mhm.
website, that you want to
Mhm.
send people to it, that it has all of your resources, easy ways to get in touch with you. All of that has to be in place before we try to send people somewhere. And it's not the first time I've had that conversation with a business owner, because eventually, once you dig a little deeper and you discover the things that they're not big fans of with their own stuff, that's usually the first place I like to start. Um, so for most business owners, especially most small business owners, because we're so, and I'm one of them, right? Like, I'm, even as a solopreneur, I'm a small business owner, right? We
Mhm.
pile up a bunch of tactics and wind up committing what I call random acts of marketing over time. We decided at some point we were going to do a bunch of trial and error, and we never really revisited the stuff to see where the errors were. We just keep doing stuff and we don't measure it, or we forget that it costs a monthly subscription or whatever. So once you pull back the layers behind that and see, like, oh, we just sort of did all of this stuff without a strategy, now we have a whole different problem where if you can have a simple to understand and easy to install playbook of sorts. And I don't really love that term, because I know that a lot of consultants and a lot of coaches, they say, like, this is the way I would do it. This is the playbook. This is whatever.
Mhm.
But I mean, that is, from a tactical standpoint, you do have to know, are we posting twice a week? Are we sending emails? Are we doing this? Like, that's all part of the playbook, right?
Mhm.
But business owners really need somebody or something, some system to help filter out all of the stuff you shouldn't do or you should do later, and prioritize the stuff that you have to do now in order to grow your brand the right way. That also, by the way, sounds really slow and really arduous. And it is, because I think a lot of business owners, especially in the age of AI, want things very quickly. I could vibe code this thing today and it would be ready, or whatnot. But again, like, taking the time to slow down and discern and actually put processes and platforms and whatever else in place, that's how you set a brand up for success. And I think that's what a lot of business owners just forget. You get so ingrained in the day to day, the long term, and the big rocks, that sometimes you forget you also have to have a plan for what you're doing, not just for your branding and your marketing, but really for your business as a whole.
Yeah, it's often almost more important to choose what not to do than what to do initially.
Mm-hmm.
And people are saying they want that clarity, they want that focus. Well, you got to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't think about, like, oh, let's filter this through some purposes and some risks and identify those. And what we're really doing is finding out what to leave behind, or
Yes.
even if it's a not yet. And sometimes a not yet is you're panicking. I've seen owners when their team comes through and the team's like pushing something and they're like, no, this needs to happen. I'm like, and I usually walk up to them and go, if we solve those top two things your team is pushing, it's probably going to solve this one too,
Yep.
the not yet.
Yep.
So it's often by doing that, you gain that focus, you go in that clarity, and the team moves forward with it, and then solves other problems that look like they're on the back burner, but they're just they need that is the missing piece.
That's right.
Um, you mentioned something about when I first asked about, like, how what struggles do business leaders bring to you, and you say, well, this is what they bring to me, but really this is what's happening. And this kind of comes back to asking better questions. How have you evolved yourself to ask better questions?
Man, this was a commitment I made, not just like during my career change, which I've already mentioned, but in any of my freelance work, and now it's in my consulting or coaching or whatever kind of work it is.
Hmm.
I made a commitment very early on to be as non-prescriptive as possible. And I know, as like leaders, and especially in the marketing world, that sounds
Hmm.
like the antithesis of what we should be doing. Like, we're supposed to tell tell somebody
Yes.
like this is what you should do holistically.
Mhm.
What I have found though is when you can actually partner with a business owner, and not just in, fluffy marketing talk, but when you can
Mhm.
actually understand what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish, what their big dreams are, what drives them, it puts you in a better position for both of you to win, because you build a better relationship with that owner, and they
Mhm.
build a lot more trust with you, and eventually they will just say, what do you think? The
Mhm.
key to getting there though is you've got to ask better questions. You've got to ask the what ifs. You've got to take what they say and process it for half a second and then go, okay, 2 weeks ago you mentioned something different. Talk me through the shift from there to here. And so when I talk about asking better questions, part of that comes from a desire to spark curiosity within a business owner again. There are some business owners that want to just flat out get stuff done and make more money. That's great. Being a driver like that, it's very, very important, especially in sales heavy businesses or retail or ecom or whatever it is. All of those things are really good. At the same time, though, most business owners won't slow down long enough to ask some of the critical questions, like, what is it like to be on the receiving end of our brand? What is a customer actually experiencing? Is what I said in this board meeting or in this executive level meeting the same thing that gets translated out via social media or email or our web copy or on sales calls? And once you can kind of put a business owner on their heels, not in a bad way, but get them to back away from the table for half a second and really start to think those things through, then you put them in a position to be in, a way to say it is they're more poised, or they're better positioned to have clarity from that point on. And I never treat clarity as a destination, by the way. Clarity is very simply just a direction. It is putting one foot in front of the other and saying, this is the way that we're going. And yes, we have our bags packed, and yes, we have gas in the tank, but at the end of the day, we're picking a direction. We're not picking a destination. So sometimes like destinations need to happen, right? We've got to have
Yeah.
goals. We've got to have KPIs.
Mhm.
We've got to have numbers. We've got to have a way to tie all
Mhm.
of this stuff together. But internally, clarity does not look like I have all of the answers. I know with 100% certainty
Mhm.
I can micromanage this thing into success or anything like that. It's really being a vision caster and saying, this is where we're going, and this is why it matters. And more importantly, this is how your role, whatever it is, ties back to our mission, our vision, our goals, our KPIs, or whatever else it is. It just starts with asking better questions. Again, a business owner gets to the point where certainty becomes king, and that's where you start to choke out creativity, efficiency, and momentum faster than everybody will ever realize.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You mentioned casting a direction, and I like to I usually call what I'm saying is I give you a system with a flexible backbone,
Mm-hmm.
because I often approach things as a facilitator, so I'm a guide, not the hero.
100%.
So yeah, and essentially from there, I'm helping them focus on their expertise, be who they are meant to be,
Mm-hmm.
and from there, what you said, it's I really like that you said it was a destination, and once they build those strategies, it's more of a what I call them is treating everything as a kind of an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking, and we had an earlier discussion. We talked about testing
Yeah.
and the importance of testing these things out. I have it where even your tasks are, in some ways, you treat them like mini experiments. That way, you can have that flexibility of creating micro pivots, and that's what I call when I say micro pivot. A micro pivot is just a small tweak to whatever you're doing. What's working? What didn't work? What would you do differently?
Yep.
And that keeps you from strategically flipping the table on the entire team.
Yep.
And that's why I really like it. Wasn't a direction because it is a destination, but those destinations can pivot. Long as it's not a giant move
Mhm.
for the end goal.
Yep.
But I really like how you said, yeah, it's a destination, or not a destination, but a direction. And
Yes.
eventually that direction, you'll find out where the destination is once you get there.
Yeah.
Because it's
Exactly.
going to change throughout time. Yeah. So we
100%.
kind of, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I had a client who went through this exact same thing, and
Yeah.
they realized like we did a low level, low risk test that wind up
Mhm.
just flopping, and it wound
Mhm.
up it wound up creating something way better. So they decided
Mhm.
very early on we want to do webinars.
Mhm.
Traditional landing page, register, show up, all that kind of stuff. So out of, I'm gonna make these numbers up on the spot, right? 10,000 people got the email, right? 1,000 of them got to clicked on the thing, right?
Mhm.
100 of them might have registered and 10 showed up. I mean, that is an abysmal show up rate if we're being honest.
Mhm.
We did this 3 or 4 times. We didn't see any traction. Weren't getting anybody to sign up for the paid ones for sure, and the free ones, nobody was showing up to. So one day I put the replay link into an email and said, "Hey, just in case you missed this, go to this." Well, we
Yeah.
10x'd the number of people who actually showed up and viewed the thing.
Hmm.
And so we realized very quickly this isn't a content problem, this is a delivery problem. The way
Yeah.
we are delivering this content just isn't connecting with our audience. And so let's shift how we do this. And so we went from trying to do these live webinars to why don't we start a podcast? And so that's what we're in the process of doing right now. And all of the build momentum, it's kind of tailored around a book launch, and all these things kind of came together. But I was so proud of this business owner for not getting discouraged. I think a lot of business owners try a lot of things. A lot of brand leaders, they'll try a bunch of stuff, and when it flops, they just go, "Well, crap, now what do I do?" And you're exactly right. When you can just make a pivot rather than an entire 180, it could change the trajectory of what you're doing and just maybe change the delivery mechanism or the creative or whatever it is around it. So, I mean, emails are a great example of that. A/B testing subject lines is so stinking easy, especially if you have a big audience. Do it all the time if you can. And it doesn't just have to be like a 10-10-80. It can be a 50-50. Just put different stuff in front of your customers and see what happens, right? You're not losing anything in some of these low risk tests. You're not trying to land a $10,000 retainer by spending 9. There's ways that we can do that, from swapping out creative to doing things like, Google Performance Max and Meta, and captioned videos or non-captioned videos. Pick something and just try it, because you'll never know how your audience reacts until you actually put it in place.
Oh, yeah. So when do you ever run into business owners that, like, they're used to doing big things, or the ones who are just doing 10,000 things, and if it doesn't work, they just switch? How do you help them start thinking in small, fast tests instead?
Yeah, I think part of it is them understanding their own ecosystem. So, and this is just something that like startups have a big hurdle to jump, because when you don't have an audience, when you're trying to grow your brand awareness and all those things, testing it's a lot harder. It's way harder to build something from scratch and then try to test your way into
Absolutely.
something, versus if you already have an existing list of 10,000 people. Yeah, testing should
Yeah.
be pretty easy, and retargeting and Meta and everything else will come a lot more seamlessly. I think part of it is when a business owner understands everything that they're doing and how to prioritize it, it makes selling, if you will, those low level tests a lot more palatable for them, because they know this thing is already working. Let's go try this other thing just for a minute. Or I've had this idea for a long time. I want to see if a free PDF would move the needle for anybody, or if we get any kind of engagement. I'm doing a test right now with a business owner who's in the retail space and bought the business from somebody else about a year ago. And we're testing out different content on social media, like inherited a wonderful following on social media. And so some of the stuff we're doing, it's getting a good reaction. But we had one on this past Friday that just completely popped off. And I was like, this is something we have to pay attention to. This is the kind of content that is very directly resonating with your customers. And so let's find a way to iterate on that and see if we can not necessarily replicate the results, but build upon that type of content. And they were like, yeah, absolutely. Like, all it takes is one time just to see it work. And again, we're not talking about, 10 viewers versus 10 million. We're talking about going from maybe 2 to 3,000 to 10,000 and going, whoa, there's something happening here that we need to lean into.
Actually, this would also, I know you're talking about testing with customers or marketing testers. It's for any of our listeners. This also works for your internal systems too. Test your internal systems and find out what's working and what's not. And
Yep.
keep that way too. It isn't just rubber stamp sales, CRM and stuff. Even within your CRM, change it, test it, move it. Keep that attitude. That's going to work inside and outside just as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the underrated ways to test stuff too, because we talk all the time about making raving fans of our stuff and having advocates out in the world. Referral business and renewal business is awesome when you have it.
Mhm.
But when you have those advocates internally, you want to talk about creating some unstoppable momentum. When your team members are included in the process, bought in, sold out, excited to go to work, making better stuff. I mean, everybody wins in
Yeah.
internally. Like you can
Oh
feel
yeah.
that level of synergy, as overused as that word is.
Yeah, yeah, it's synergy.
Yeah.
I never use the term of what I do to improve your culture. But if your teams are having independent ideas shared with everybody else, they're moving forward with the best and they're testing them and working them out, their a level of buy-in just goes through the roof. And by the action of that, your culture improves.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're exactly right.
Is your IT infrastructure starting to feel like a bottleneck? Many growing leaders hit a point where technical debt slows their team down and keeps their best engineers stuck in constant firefighting. That's where Kevin Weber at Polyfortech comes in. At Polyfortech, Kevin does more than just consult on your infrastructure challenges. He acts as a fractional CTO who actually gets in the trenches with your team to modernize your systems and migrate to the cloud. If building technical debt is slowing your business growth, then set up a call with Kevin at polyfortech.com. That's Polyfortech, POLYFORTECH.com. Hey, are you spinning your wheels trying to figure out what will really boost your business's bottom line? At Emberry Solutions, our Profit Priority Workshop is here to cut through the noise. We help you zero in on what truly matters, aligning your team, optimizing your processes, and magnifying your profits. Imagine your business running smoother than ever, with every decision and effort leading straight to increased profits. That's what focusing on the right priorities can do. Ready to boost your efficiency and profits? Visit Emberry Solutions and let's start making your business work smarter. At Emberry Solutions, we take your business from bottlenecks to breakthroughs. So, in your experience, we're gonna get a little bit of what's next with for businesses.
Sure.
In your experience, what's the most common point where a leader kind of gets stuck in what's next for their business, especially when they're coming to you? Like I said, we've kind of talked a little bit about like they don't know what they're saying, but what is their typical sticking point to where they can't pivot to the next step in their business in for like his marketing and branding and such?
Yeah, I wish it was more concrete than it actually is right now, but it is, I
Hmm.
mean, it's ethereal just because of the world that we live in, right? I think
Yeah.
so we're exposed to so many options, so many tools, so many ways
Hmm.
to do business or build the next thing that I think it's just a different version of shiny object syndrome where
Yeah.
we think about the newest AI tool or this person had success doing it this way, we should replicate that or whatever.
Hmm.
And I take a lot of time with a business owner to make sure that we are slowing down and really using some intentional discernment
Hmm.
to make those decisions. Now, there are times where we want to jump on an opportunity. Yes, there's a sponsorship, or there's a way to get things done efficiently and quickly. Yeah, let's lean into those if they make sense. But maybe it's just because I'm old school, but I like to take my time with a business owner, and I let them know that up front. Like, I'm not just here to do a 2 week engagement and then leave. We're talking about 90 or 120, 180 days to start seeing some of these results happen, because unfortunately that's how long it takes to build things that last.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And so I think for a lot of business owners, and probably for a lot of your listeners, there is always going to be a temptation to find the flash in the pan, the viral thing, or
Hmm.
jump on whatever the trend wagon is and try to make that stick. But if it doesn't make sense for your brand, then I would argue you probably shouldn't do it. Now, there are times where, yeah, absolutely, go for awareness and go for list growth and those things. Be creative, but don't let it compromise the integrity of your brand long term. Because, and I talk about this with like Super Bowl ads, for example. Super Bowl ads are fantastic because they have a very large reach, but if what they see is not what they experience on your website and on your everyday social media and everything else, well, how quickly is your brand going to erode right in front of your eyes because you went for clever over clear, or you went for creative over competitive, or you just threw everything at the wall and went, let's go all out and see what happens. I preach about consistency so much in the branding space because it matters so much. Love them or not, Liquid Death has done one of the greatest jobs of this, I think, in modern history, where
Yes.
they picked
Yes. Oh
they picked a
gosh.
direction and they went all in
Hmm.
on it. It's crazy. It's probably somewhat sacrilegious if you really wanted to dig into it. I know they had at one point like a contract on their website where you could sell your soul and
Yeah.
get all of this extra stuff. And I was like, I mean, I'm not quite there yet, but I think it's clever, right?
Oh, it's super clever.
But
There's so many RTDs trying to mimic what they do right now.
Oh, absolutely. But if you look at who they have been in the arc of their brand over the last, really 6 years, they have
Hmm.
been super consistent. Every time I love their text messages, by the way, because I get
Hmm.
product updates before I get the email and before they go public. And they're still doing the same kind of like strange and quippy stuff that they were always doing. They've just been really consistent about it. And yeah, they're going to make stupid one-off $10,000, 6-foot can coolers and things like that. I think the one they just released was like the Eternal playlist where you can have like your urn has a speaker in it and it's always connected to this one Spotify playlist where I mean,
Oh, good lord.
it's ridiculous, right? But
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
their
yeah.
brand and that's what they are so good at. You look at things like you can go to Apple, you can go to Coca-Cola, you can go to one of my favorites, which is Patagonia, right? Patagonia does
Hmm.
the exact same thing. They want you to buy something once, you can trade it in, you can upcycle, you can repair
Hmm.
it. They care very deeply about the environment, but they also make really quality stuff. The
Hmm.
more consistent your brand can be, the more likely you are to build long term trust and have long term success.
Hmm.
Yes, you have to do campaigns, and yes, you have to be innovative in the way that you do it. But at the end of the day, consistency is the thing that's going to keep your brand on track. And so
Hmm.
many business owners don't have somebody like that in their corner, or they partner with somebody that thinks a lot like them and doesn't have that level of objectivity, and you just wind up doing a bunch of crazy stuff all the time, and stuff breaks and you don't know where the what tab the music is playing in, and the whole nine, right? So I mean, that's what I really try to impart to business owners, especially, is shiny object syndrome is fine, and if you want to try new stuff, that's great. Just make sure it makes sense. You can still be creative while sticking to your brand standards. You can still you can still be clever, and you can still run viral campaigns or try new creative anywhere that you want to. Just make sure it's consistent, because that's going to save you a whole lot of heartache and headache long term.
So, speaking of shiny object syndrome, or the other term squirrel, what trends are you seeing that leaders aren't preparing for because of all this stuff, but they should be?
I think that we have swung, or we are swinging very sharply away from human resources
Mhm.
as important and central to our business for the sake of expediency and efficiency.
Mm.
And I am not trying to disparage anybody who uses AI stuff, because I use it every single day and it's super
Mhm.
helpful. Um,
Mhm.
I have a feeling, though, that the pendulum is going to swing the other way, where certain changes are made, and whether it's regulation or my favorite tool is getting acquired and shutting down and it doesn't work the same way, or whatever it is. I think there's a proclivity to find a better way to do things, always, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think the challenge for a lot of business owners, especially if you're in a small business, is, can I make sure that I do it the right way and I don't compromise my business in the process? In other words, I think we're always looking for that one thing we can be totally dependent on to make our lives easier, and it's just a holy grail type of search. I don't know that it's going to come, and I don't know that it's going to be the thing that moves the needle for your business in the way that you want to. And again, I'm probably more old school than I should be in this particular facet, but those really key partnerships, I think, are where brands are going to win long term. I think when you can
Yeah.
find an internal marketing person, when you can work with an agency or a consultant or
Mhm.
somebody on a regular basis, I think that's where you're going to start to see better traction. It just takes a little bit longer. So, and we see this in kids these days, right? Like we all have these, little devices in front of us that, provide instant whatever and results, and retention doesn't really go along with our information age right now. But I think for a lot of small business owners, just taking a step back and breathing a little bit and trying to build it the right way versus the fast way, that I think is the key for a lot of business owners. I would say part B to that is because I know there has just been a surge and a boom in entrepreneurship. Social media has exposed us to other people's middle and maybe end when we're at our beginning, and that is so dangerous as a business owner. I struggle with this too. It's not imposter syndrome in the traditional sense, but it's constantly seeing how somebody else is winning and thinking I should be there already. Why am I
Yeah,
not there
that's
already?
definitely
Where are the shortcuts? What do I need to do? And then you get inundated with all these ads that say make $10,000 a week using AI and all of that. And I'm like, I mean, that sounds interesting, right? But at the same time, if I were to go down that route, I don't know that I would build things the right way. So I think you have to be very conscious of like what gets you up in the morning, what can you do today to, make yourself 1% better, is that old coaching adage, right? But I think that mental shift helps a lot of business owners last longer term than the ones who are just trying to get there really quickly and then find sustainability.
yeah. And I don't think your ideas are old school. I think AI is validating your old school ideas because like I said, we're always trying to find out what not to do. And sometimes we have to experiment with things to break them to find out we shouldn't do that. And I
Right.
think AI is shining a light on that
Yep.
because there's a lot more people are realizing the value of human to human interaction because of AI. So I think your old school ideas are becoming new school ideas. So you're
Well,
you're
I
just
hope
you're just
so.
ahead of the trend and you don't even
I,
see it.
I love to be a trendsetter in that
There you
regard, man.
go. Maybe just send it. Yeah, yeah. So also, I would like to know what is next for you and your business.
I ask that question every single day. I don't really know. I'm making it up as I go along, Matt. I will act like I have a plan all day long and then be like,
Hmm.
yeah, that kind of worked. Let's do it again. I'm kidding.
No,
Well, here's what's funny.
I don't know. There's days.
I mean, as an evolution, I started out thinking I was just going to do like content and copywriting for the rest of my life, and was going to help businesses, in conversion copy and that kind of stuff. And I realized about 6 months in, after asking all of my clients at the time, like, explain what I do to you, what I do to you, explain what I do for you in
Uh-huh.
your words. It was all about strategy. It was all about, positioning and coaching and consulting and all those things. And I quickly realized that all I'm really doing is helping to solve problems, and especially for small business owners who don't have maybe an entire team around them to help filter all of that. That was the position I was taking on. And so most of last year was leaning into that a lot more heavily and eventually realizing, well, there's probably a book in here, there's a framework, there's a lot of different pieces that I can put together. So my focus this year has primarily been on how can I provide a lot of value to these small business owners without it being super taxing and long term or whatnot. And so I created this 30-day sprint for small business owners where I will audit everything that you have, all of your systems, all of your social media, all of your web copy, sales, whatever it is. And then over either a half day or a full day, we'll do a total whiteboard session of it's brainstorming on steroids where we'll throw everything up on the wall and say, what are we good at? It comes in different flavors, right? Sometimes it's a SWOT analysis. Sometimes it's, the four helpfuls. Sometimes it's, everything from like, hey, let's just sit here and dream for a couple of hours, right? And then I take all of that and I put it into a 90-day, like, this is what we have to both protect and create. And then a 12-month roadmap to say, if we want to go from here to there, what has to be true over the next 12 months in a phased approach, not just an all out, like, let's go kind of mode. So that's what I've been developing and working on. It's had a lot of resonance with small business owners and even specific teams, marketing teams and internal teams that sometimes you just need an adrenaline shot. Sometimes you just need somebody to come in and see some of the things that you can't see because you're too close to the problem, or as the saying
Nice.
goes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's hard to read the label when you're inside the jar, right? So let's
Yep, yep.
let's make sure that everybody is looking at the same thing. And what I've found, Matt, is once we go through that particular exercise together, there are two things that come out. Yes, there's the roadmap and there's the priority list, but everybody who is involved in that process is so much more aligned on where we're going next because we all looked at the same table, if you will, for an extended period of time, and we all have a good grasp on what is in front of us, good, bad, and ugly. And so now decisions are a little bit easier. There's less tension in the room, especially when you can put data, which is, arguably the most objective thing. Like, you can't argue with your numbers because your numbers are your
Mhm.
numbers. that opens up a whole new world of possibilities. From a leadership standpoint, it makes decisions a lot easier. I think it makes coaching and hiring and one-on-ones and all of those day-to-day leadership things so much stronger. It helps teams create better stuff because they know how to ask better questions. They understand the context. They know how to connect what they do to the overall mission, vision, KPIs, goals, whatever else it is. And then at the end of the day, this is the most important thing that we've just kind of danced around a little bit. You want your customers to be receiving the clearest messages, the easiest stuff to understand that they possibly can, so that number one, they buy more stuff or they stay longer, and two, so that they have more trust in your company and your brand long term and turn into advocates and hopefully referrals and everything else. So that's what I'm leaning into a little bit more. And yes, there's AI that's involved in some of that stuff, right? But
Yeah. Oh
at
yeah.
the end of the day, it's still sitting knee to knee across from a business owner. And I mean, digging in and asking questions, like I'll ask questions that they probably have not thought of in the last 5 years of running their business. Or,
Mhm.
eventually if I ask, if I go down the 5 whys and they finally get to the point where like, yeah, I have no idea why we do that. I've never really dug into it to that level. It's all about helping a business owner and a leader get above their business for long enough to go, oh, I forgot that's where we said we were going. And now when we get back to ground level, we can pack our bags differently and go in a better direction.
Yikes, you just spoke about so many things that I do that we're gonna have to talk afterwards. This, because what I do integrates and it is similar in so many different ways that, oh my gosh.
Yep.
I mean, the one thing I would add is what you're doing normalizes decision making. And what I mean by that is it takes your extrovert and your introvert and equalizes them getting their points out. Even to the point to where I've discovered that decision-making sessions like that, if you break them up into a silent session and a discussion session,
Mhm.
you work on the strengths of both personality types and you get
Yep.
the best out of both of them. So yeah, definitely, and that was a big one I noticed when I started doing this is it just so normalized the whole room. You being stepping in as a third party
Mhm.
brings in a psychological security
Mhm.
of I can't even quite give it words, but people
Yep.
are a little braver to speak up in front of other people and bring up their ideas. If you're just that one person there that doesn't have skin in the game as far as what their business, but your skin in the game is they're helping them with their success. It changes the ecosystem and the environment right then and there as you step in. So it is a
100%.
really cool thing to witness, and then people for the first time sometimes in their lives making their little aha moments. Just
Mhm.
that answers my why for what I do. So yeah.
Well, and I think you know this as well. When I talk about branding and marketing,
Mhm.
I talk about them as if they're an important part of your business, or in many ways,
Mhm.
kind of the life and the blood of what you do, because they are.
Mhm.
When you put it in the context of what are our competitors doing and whatnot, it creates this sort of, I hate to use the term common enemy, right? Because it's your
Mhm.
brand and your business that we're talking about,
Yeah.
right? But it does give a more neutral avenue to discuss some of those things and the ideas that come out of
Mhm.
it. Man, some of the dreaming that goes into this. What if we had a course? What if we did this? What if, oh man, it's,
Mhm.
and it always happens. Like you've been in these sessions before where you can feel everything shift in the room, where everybody goes from evaluating what the thing is to
Mhm.
creating again and to dreaming again and to getting excited about how what they do connects to this thing that we're all building together. And it's just
Mhm.
really exciting. And it just takes a minute, like you said, the
Mhm.
safety piece of it takes some stage setting, and it takes some work to get there, but man, it is so worth it. And if you're not doing that on a
Absolutely.
on an annual basis at minimum, I think you're missing a
Mhm.
big opportunity for your brand.
Oh
If
yeah.
it's just about
Totally.
budgets and tweaks and those sorts of things, I don't know that it's going to produce the same kind of
Mhm.
results than if you were to bring somebody in, or at least take a day or two to step back and think through, how does this actually affect what our customers are seeing.
So if anybody listening to this wants to kind of slow down, use their team to the maximum efficiency to build their brand, create their better marketing, and have a guide like Charlie, where would they find you?
You can always find me on LinkedIn, Charlie Sales, and yes, that is my real last name. I avoided sales for a long time. And now here I am, like that's, 90% of
So,
what I do, on a regular
yeah.
basis. You can also go to clarityovereverything.com, read about all the
Right.
different ways that we could work together. I have three main offerings, by the way, that
Okay.
I'd love to plug real quick. Number one
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
if you just need somebody to think stuff through, if you need a trusted advisor, an objective voice in your back corner, I call it the Alfred to your Batman. That's one of the greatest places to start, especially if you've already got a team that just needs somebody else in the mix to help see possibilities and opportunities and maybe prioritize
Mm.
stuff differently. Of course, I mentioned the Clarity and Alignment Sprint. It's a 30-day engagement. It only takes about 30 days to completely shift how you approach your brand and your marketing. And then there's an ongoing partnership aspect of that afterwards, which, if you wanted to go through the sprint and then keep on afterwards for some execution or whatnot, I have one of those retainer style packages as well.
Thanks very much. So again, yeah, I really liked where this talk went. I've been learning a lot. Got really excited a few times. There's all these fun things. We recognize the power
Yeah.
of being stepping into that role, that third person, and in your case, branding, marketing as an architect for this, and bringing that clarity and consistency and focus all together. So really, 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 as you say, making it about clarity over everything.
Right.
Charlie, thanks for being on the show. This was a great interview. Learned a lot, and I hope to talk to you again real soon.
Man, thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.